Once we discover we're both autistic and ADHD, it feels like we've unlocked the key to everything. But then comes the real question. How do we actually use this key? I'm Adria Sophia Melikar, an ADHD coach who's walked this path myself. I've spent over a decade helping hundreds who don't fit the mold to find their own way forward. On ADHD Sparks, we're reimagining what's possible when we stop forcing ourselves to be who we're not and start doing life differently in ways that leave us feeling resourced and alive. Hello, welcome to ADHD Sparks, another episode. I'm your host, Adria, and today we're talking about those seemingly small transitions, things like travel or shifts in routine that can so easily throw us off. And this is something that's on my mind right now since I just got back from our regular trip up to Oregon to stay in our camper van at my partner's warehouse. You may have heard me talk about this before if you've listened to other episodes of this show. But basically the last 5 years or so, we've been going back and forth between Nevada and Oregon. We have a camper van. For a while there, we were going back and forth like almost every month. And it is a 2 or 3 day drive and, between the two and the way we do it. And so it would be like these transitions that happened on the regular. And in some ways that made it easier. I kind of knew I had like a process. And in some ways that compounded everything and started to make it way harder eventually. Until, I was like, I need to put roots down and stay in one place a lot longer. My nervous system can't do this. So over the last few years, I've started to pull back more and more, being in one place more and more, finally culminating in us buying a home here in Las Vegas, where my family is and all the things. But we still have this back and forth that happens, maybe like, for me now, it's maybe 3 or 4 times a year. For my partner, maybe it's more because his like actual home base for his physical location, I guess, for his business is up there. So anyway, we just got back from a trip. He had needed to cover for his employee who was out of town, and it happened to be my birthday. So we're like, well, let's go up together. I want to be with you on my birthday. So we turned it into a thing, just got back, and just right now, as I'm recording, I am in the transition portal. That's what I like to call it, where we got back 2 days ago on Sunday. Today I'm recording, it's a Tuesday, and I'm still in that recovery place. Like I noticed myself really tired yesterday, and, it compounded this time because we stayed in a motel. We didn't have our van, and there was really loud neighbors, and I didn't get a lot of sleep. So that probably helped make it even harder. But it's a familiar feeling the day after I returned to be really tired and just like kind of groggy, maybe a little bit down, not super like excited about things or feeling a little like blah, and then like making it mean something, which we've talked about it in past episodes. But really, it's just like that recovery time. My nervous system's recalibrating. And so this is like smaller transitions we're talking about in this episode, but I've definitely often have clients who reach out or I hear from ADHDers who hit a major burnout after a big transition, like moving cross country or becoming a parent. Like those are those big life transitions. And that can be what led to discovering their neurotype, can have a major destabilizing impact. But today we're not talking about those major life transitions, though there is definitely similarity in how those affect us. And I think a lot of what I'm sharing in this episode can apply to that too. Like it's just maybe on bigger scales. So yes, these everyday regular kinds of transitions that we're talking about today, they are often seen as more normal. And this means that they're more easily dismissed or pushed through by us, like ourselves. I feel like often we don't give ourselves the space or the things we actually need because we don't think we should need it, or we don't, we just kind of brush right by it. But these transitions for ADHD brains aren't just logistics. They are this complete nervous system recalibration that requires time and energy. And that is something that others, maybe who don't have the same neurotype or who have never thought about this before, just don't expect. And so we're kind of working against expectations, as we do in so many ways. Okay, so let's dig into this episode. So okay, question number 1. What transition have you been struggling with lately that others think should be no big deal? Okay, so I opened the conversation around this van travel between Oregon and Nevada that I've done the last 5 years or so. And so it's interesting because I think that usually the response that I get from others is like a "you're so lucky" type of thing, right? Like this is like seen as this aspirational lifestyle, like where, location independent, van life. This is like influencer type things. And so it's seen that way versus like it's work, And so that's the response. And in some ways, like, yes, that's actually quite true. I mean, this is intentional. We wanted to be location independent. We wanted to have a van. We love van life. We love exploring and being out there, and like the ADHD sides of us, like really loves the stimulation and like mixing things up and all of that. And also it's that nervous system dysregulation of being in that travel portal or being in that transition portal. So what I find is that, and I feel like an expert at this now because I can't even count how many times I've gone back and forth and done this trip. So eventually I started to notice patterns, right? Patterns that would happen. And so the week before I leave, I often notice it's like I haven't even left yet, or I haven't even, started packing, or if I have started packing, like everything's under control. I've got it. I know what I'm doing. But I'll notice that I start to feel like a little anxious, like this undercurrent of like, and it's kind of like it's there the whole time. And I'm a little bit more tired. I have less spoons for different things. There's this like low-level executive function drain that's happening in the background as I enter that transition portal on the front end. And so I know for myself that I need to cut back on tasks. I needed to like look at, what my to-do list is or whatever it is and pare it down to the necessary things that have to happen this week, creatively procrastinate, move things forward. And that, if I know this is coming, which I usually we have like at least a week or two that we kind of have a sense of like we're doing this. So in advance, I will not add extra things that week. Like as much as I can control, which isn't always the case that I can control everything, right? We're humans, this is life. But as much as I control, I try to kind of pare down as much as I can and not add and just recognize this is probably going to be a harder time. I'm like try to make the transition easier for myself. So, like I wouldn't add extra social things that week because that is one of the biggest things that drain my spoons, right? And then the week that I get there, there's this recovery time. There's this adjustment period. Like I have this warehouse adjustment period because when we're there, we are living inside of his warehouse. We pull our camper van inside. We're inside his warehouse and we have a little like kind of couch and kitchenette set up kind of pseudo thing in the corner of the warehouse. And so it's like I'm adjusting back to that life and adjusting back to the town that we're in that I love, but there's still like okay, wait, where did I store my like my shampoo bar, and like how do I do the shower in the van? It's like all these things that I have to be like, okay, how do I do that? Remember, right? There's like spoon usage and so like when I get there, there's that recalibration time on that end. And then when I return home, then I have the recovery time on that end, like that transition portal, which I'm currently in. And that's like getting back to my regular routines. And I'm like, okay, now that's right. On these days of the week, I go to Pilates and this is how I make my breakfast here, but it's different than how I made my breakfast there. And there's just like this recalibration, right? And this resettling. And I tend to feel tired. I tend to feel just like it takes longer to get back into things and get back to the place that I was at when I was settled and everything was kind of like moving along at a solid, more grounded routine. So yes. So that's kind of like the experience of this like transition when others might think it's no big deal, but it is a big deal. And for a long time when I was ignoring it, that was really amping up, slipping back into burnout or not being able to get out of burnout or, just feeling dysregulated like all the time. And so it's starting to honor that. And for me, part of that's been like creating less transitions because I've been staying in one place longer. But still, it's like, it's recognizing that there is that transition portal and knowing how to navigate with it. And I want to say too, there is also this unique ADHD element here. So unlike if we were maybe purely autistic, if you're anything like me, we don't necessarily set up our life to have minimal transitions. And let me give you an example of what I mean. So my dad is more autistic forward, and he would be happy if nothing ever changed. Like any change, whether it's going on a vacation, a new patio being put in the backyard, or like moving his entire house, like whatever it is met with grumbling, met with dysregulation. He kind of like disassociates and it takes a while for him to kind of come back online. And he would just be like, please never change anything. It's good. Let's just keep going with status quo and like how things are. This is nice. And then my mom is more ADHD presenting and wants all the transitions all the time. So always kind of like needs something happening on the horizon to look forward to, whether it's a trip planned, a new gadget that, she thinks is going to like shift our lifestyles, or like kind of has that dream of excitement, or, like whatever it might be, changing up the room. I do that, like rearranging things so that the energy freshens. And she gets down and aimless if she doesn't have that anchoring thing to look to in the future. And so for me as an ADHDer, I've kind of got both of those things going on. So I definitely like the stimulation of, like doing things, making change, looking forward to things. I love that anchoring feeling also, where there's something I'm looking to, like that is really quite helpful for me as well. Like there's always something in the horizon that I can kind of like look towards, know that's coming. And at the same time, sometimes that feels like ominous to me, even if it's positive. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that trip that I love and I'm so excited about is coming up. And I know by now that it is probably going to throw me off. So I approach transitions or these changes with some caution, and I plan that in. But it definitely is part of that paradox of being ADHD, that it's like, we're going to create more of these transitions probably, right? Like we're going to actually have more of this in our life. So it definitely would be helpful for us to know how to navigate it best, or like what we need individually, personally, ourselves, in order to be able to flow through that in a way that is, I guess, the least disruptive possible for us, or like the most healthy long-term possible. Okay, so question number 2. How do you handle regular transitions when your brain needs way more time and energy than everyone expects? Okay, yes. And I think this is a big one too, that expectation, like us needing transition time that others just don't understand. So here's an example. My partner doesn't have the same transition struggle that I do. So if I want to feel good, then I need to know how to advocate for myself. I need to know what I need in order to structure it into our plans. I need to like have a sense of what to say, like, hey, I need this, or what to kind of like build in, because it's not really necessarily, understood, or it's not something other people are needing in the, who are living with me and going along on these things. And so I need to know what I need and be able to create it for myself. And in terms of expectations, okay, so something that comes to mind too is when I used to work for the state in the natural resources department, the kind of the headquarters of our state was an 8-hour drive away. So that meant kind of maybe sometimes flying up to meet with my boss, to work on, any projects or do trainings or whatever it might be. And I remember that there was this, that one of these times, a boss kind of like emailed something over to me and was like, hey, can you take a look at this before we meet when you get up here? And the plane would be a great time for you to review it. And, intellectually, yeah, it would be a great time for me to like dig into some project paperwork till I'm up to speed or whatever it might be. But also for me, I have flight anxiety, so there's no way my brain can even function in that way during that time. But also, that's a transition portal. And so like intellectually, it seems like I should be able to, but it just doesn't work out that way. Like I could force myself to, but it'd be like taking away from something else, right? It would mean extra spoon usage from like having to push and try. And then that would mean maybe burning out down the road, or that would mean being, taking away energy from being able to do something else later or whatever it might be. Like it's not that logistical thing. Like it seems like it's a logistical thing, but it is not. And then there's the coming back from a vacation. Because definitely there's the expectation that if you came back from a vacation and you're coming into work or you're, whatever you're doing, it doesn't even have to be coming into work. There's that expectation that you are rested and that you can like jump right back in and you've got all the rest now, you've recovered. Yet I know that I need recovery days. Even if my vacation was fun, I'm in the transition portal. Like regardless, whatever it was that I did, I'm re-entering into my life and I'm in the transition portal and I probably need recovery days. And maybe I can't always give that to myself, but it's helpful to know and to try to build in as much as I can to make it as helpful as I can. I'm working around real life. So, maybe you have to work that day or maybe you have like whatever it is, but how can you create space? How can you like give yourself a little bit of breathing space? Like lower your expectations of yourself, just recognize that that's probably the truth. For me, since I can build my own schedule, I definitely block out anything for having clients, for at least a couple of days after I return, if I can help it. And so there's this like needing extra time or support around these transitions, but then also the feeling shame about that I feel like we hold, where I feel like this shouldn't even be allowed. Like I shouldn't be allowed recovery time. And I really didn't even consider that it was okay to give myself. And I probably didn't even really notice that it was something I needed until I started doing all of this lifestyle design and trying to, be intentional with things and not recognizing things as just the way things are and like shake things up and be like, well, how could it feel better? I really didn't even consider that it was a thing probably until that. And yes. So I'm inviting you into a reframe here, a reframe into this time as recalibration. Transition time is recalibration time, where our nervous systems are recalibrating. It is not just logistics for us. Okay, so here's a story. Story time, gather around. So last weekend, it was my birthday weekend, and we took the van over to the coast, and we have this one kind of forested spot that's really remote. We have to drive like half an hour on a remote road where we usually don't see anybody, and we stay at the spot, and we usually don't see anybody the whole time. And it's just like, it's magical that that there isn't anybody who's discovered this or stays here. I hope it stays that way, but it's like this sure thing place that we can go where we're surrounded by this like temperate rainforest and all these like old growth forest trees. There's actual hiking trail that has been forgotten about, and everything's like overgrown. And so when I knew that we were going to need to be up there around my birthday, I was like, okay, let's do this, because I know that I can feel really settled when I'm there. And so we stayed in one place, like the place we were at, we did the weekend. So we were for 2 full days where we woke up and went to bed in the same place, didn't move the van, didn't, just went on hikes and relaxed and just enjoyed the view and the fresh air and the nature and everything. I felt so peaceful. I felt like I was giving myself what I needed. And one thing I've learned, and that this was taking advantage of, is that in order to fully relax in the van, I really need to stay somewhere for at least an entire day where I wake up there, I go to sleep there, there's no driving that day. Because if I don't, then it just feels like a series of transitions linked together, which is really fun for my ADHD side, but it kind of slowly chips away at my nervous system regulation, So I've learned that to truly feel relaxed, like I need that whole day with no driving, no transition, and that settles me. So I had 2 of those and I was feeling pretty good. And then I know what to give myself when I'm there. I know that I need this mix of like rest and just lying down, like playing games or watching shows, or just, stimulation for my brain, but just like rest for my body between getting out and being in nature and enjoying and being with my partner. And like, it's like I've found the mix. And then we left and headed back to the warehouse and to our town. And it was funny because it didn't seem like, it seemed like it should be a small transition, right? Like we literally had just gone on a van trip for the weekend and we were going back to the same place we had been. I had already gone through the transition portal there. I'd already settled in. And so it seemed like it shouldn't be a big deal. And I was rested. But I found that day that we left, when we were going back, I felt really disoriented and like jittery, but tired. And it was just like, I just knew I needed something. And I was like, I don't know. And so somehow I found my way. I realized when I was trying to figure out what I needed, that I needed to give myself some rest, like I had done when we were at the trailhead, when we were at our van spot for the last couple of days. I needed to just like lie down and be for a little bit and not be like on the move. And so my partner had seen, there's this little seaside town by where we were at. And he was like, I think I want to check out that coffee shop. And usually maybe I would join him. And I was like, I think I want to stay at the van and just like rest a little bit. And we found this spot to park that was overlooking the ocean. And I opened the van windows and could hear the sound of the ocean and see it out the windows and have the breeze, and just lay there while he went and got his coffee. And oh my gosh, it helped so much. And so that was part of that. Okay, I'm in this recalibration mode. This is what I need to give myself. This is what I know helps, because it kind of breaks a little bit of that transition bubble, just a little bit of settling. And so I'm really glad I thought of that. And now I know, I think this is what I need. And I'm learning how to put that into, different transitions, how to kind of find, okay, like how do I find the settling within the transition, within the portal, within the dysregulation, the recalibration? How do I help that along, Okay, so how do you handle regular transitions? So number 1 is really starting to collect the data. So observe your patterns, observe what usually happens for you. Are you really tired? Are you like not wanting to like socialize or see people? Are you, do all the sensory things just like escalate for you and you're just like, I can't deal with, I cannot hear anything. I need my noise canceling headphones. Like I need to wear comfy clothes. Temperature, no, I need it perfect. Like just observe, like notice what happens for you, and then you can plan for it, right? That data is really helpful. And then honor the transition portal. This is probably the most important part because we need to, it's part of that. Like I talk about this a lot, how we need to give ourselves permission to have what we need, right? Like it's like the first step, it's the hurdle. So honoring the transition portal, recognizing this as a thing for you. And so that might result in lightening your plans during that time, not making as many commitments, not making other changes that happen during that time, like knowing that you're going to be like in a bit of a portal. So like, let's just keep all the regular everyday things the same. Let's not introduce that new thing that week. We'll do it like once I recover after I've been back a couple of weeks. Right. Or like any high importance tasks maybe don't happen the week before or after the transition. And so like as much as possible, right? Where you have the option, where you have the control, this is how we start to honor that portal. Like for example, I've been wanting to kind of get back into, or I have been getting back into the native plant world and just the plant community in general here. And there was a Native Plant Society meeting, that was like the first one since before the summer, the first one from the moment that I like knew that I wanted to start maybe going to this or just like following sparks of where to go. And that was something I used to belong to. But the first meeting was literally like the night before we were leaving. And so that was something I couldn't change. And it was important to me to go. So I structured things and knew that was happening. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll just like create more space in other areas. Let me not make anything else happen. And then there's the telling others that I'm going to be less available that week, the week after, during those transition portals. It took me 2 weeks to respond to a friend's audio message. It's just, even though logistically, like my brain thinks this is just a logistical thing and it should be no big deal and I should be able to do these things, when I'm in it, I have so much less capacity, and like just making an audio message response can feel so impossible and challenging. And so I give myself grace and I tell people if I know that there might be somebody who needs something from me, or if, I have a client that might need a little more from me in that time, I'm like, hey, I might be a little bit slower to respond in these times. And because that lets me off the hook, because sometimes if you don't, or if you are still holding that same expectation of yourself, then you aren't really allowing yourself to like, you're still pushing yourself, and that takes extra spoons. So it's helpful to kind of let yourself off the hook a little bit. Like, what would that look like? What would need to happen to let you off the hook? For me, a lot of times it is telling other people so that I don't feel like, oh no, are they waiting for me? Are they worried? Are they having an expectation? And if they, do reach out, then I'm like, I can't respond, but then I feel bad. And there's like angst around it versus just like, I know I'll be able to respond when I kind of like come back from the portal, or like when I come out of it and I'm recovered a little bit, then I will feel naturally like I can respond. Yes. So that, and okay, so here's something that I find really, really helpful that maybe will be helpful for you too when it comes to transitions. So finding anchor points that kind of transcend the different locations that, like for me, transitions are a lot of times about travel. So for me, it's finding anchor points that transcend the different locations I'm going to be in. So for this might be group fitness classes. So here in Vegas, I have a Pilates studio that's wonderful and small and is exactly what I need at this time in my life. And I've always needed group fitness, so that there's like community, and there's like somebody telling me what to do, so I don't have to think about it. There's no spoons used. And small, especially lately, I've needed small because I get so overwhelmed and sensory things and all this stuff. So I have that here, and I have this regular routine around it, and it really helps my brain as well as my body. And when I go to Oregon, I have this small movement studio where I do strength training, and it's in small group classes, and I know the owner, and she's wonderful. And there's like certain elements that are shared between the two. It's very functional, very like focused on like small, slow movements, like the things that my nervous system needs in this time in my life, but also strength-based. And so I put those on the calendar, and it's like I shift over to that. And so it's like I have this, I know I'm going to have those group classes, whichever place I'm at. And so it's like an anchor point that I'm going between. So I feel a little bit more tethered and less like floating out in the world in space. I think maybe that helps the ADHD side a little bit too. And then there's watching my comfort TV show. So this is something that I naturally started doing, and I've really embraced it the last maybe couple years or so, that like I will always have one specific comfort TV show that I'm kind of working my way through that has like multiple seasons, and maybe I've seen it before, and there's like a certain feel to it, that it's familiar, the people are familiar. It doesn't like amp up my nervous system. It just feels cozy. And so I watch it when I need to like decompress, when I need to like, it's like a comfy blanket. And so I will watch that when I'm here. And, maybe I'm in between some client sessions and I need to like really fully turn off my brain, or, whatever it might be. And then I will also watch it when I am there. And so I watched it the past couple weeks while I was up in Oregon in the warehouse in the van. And it just like became the anchor point, that connection point between the two. So where can you look at this? Like, I think the anchor point concept can kind of be brought in many different ways into different situations. Like, what are your anchor points that are going to come with you and are going to stay the same in some way across that transition and the different points? So I think that like a lot of these actually can be very much extrapolated to bigger transitions in life, too. And then for me, this is maybe feeds off of that one. Going back to the same places really helps a lot. So I've started to notice that it's almost like, even though I love international travel, I love exploring new places, I love learning about cultures and seeing how people live and like all of this stuff, I've noticed that the times I feel the best are actually when I go back to the same place, because I know what to expect. That means that I can plan ahead well. I can think through how to design the whole thing well for me. I can know what clothes to bring. I can know, it can kind of like my brain can kind of like map it out and have a vision of it, kind of like that autistic piece where it's super helpful for us to know what to expect in advance, and it really settles our nervous system, like that piece. But then also when I'm there, I've like brought all the things that are like perfect for me to have there, and I'm set up. And yet I've done a transition and I'm in a different place. So there is still that stimulation happening from my ADHD side. So I've noticed that that's like super helpful. And I'm like finding ways to like, definitely when we're in Oregon, like going up to that same forest wooded spot in our camper van, like I was telling you about, like there's definitely ways I'm already working this in. And I've been like thinking about like, what does that mean in terms of bigger travel plans and stuff like that? Like I'm curious, but it's like, but it can also be, it doesn't have to be like just going back to the same places. This can be like a subset of those anchor points where it's like, okay, if I travel, like I bring my specific oatmeal packets and the silicone bowl that I make oatmeal in. Or if I'm staying with my mother-in-law for Christmas, is there like a specific coffee shop my partner and I go to for a social break that I know, I'm going to plan for, or like it's going to be the same place I'm going back to. How do we start to integrate that in ways that maybe you're very creative, but that help kind of anchor us a little bit more? Okay. I probably have a million more things to say, but that's why I have a whole podcast. So we're going to have more episodes with more things that come up. So yes. So for you, what is sparking for you from this episode? Like, take a moment to notice what is bubbling up for you, what's there at the surface, what insights maybe do you have? Take a moment to be present with that. Maybe even say it aloud. I find that super helpful for myself. I think that's the ADHD side, like saying it aloud, making it real. like helping myself remember it because I've done that. And then if you need some reminders about some of the things we talked about in this episode, you can check out the show notes at ADHDsparks.com. And it would be so cool if you shared your sparks with me over on Instagram at ADHDsparks. Okay, so what is landing for me about this whole conversation? Well, I think the big thing is how everything stems first from recognizing that there is a transition portal, right? Like you can't honor it until you recognize that there is one. And then you can collect the data. You can remove some executive function spoons usage from the week or the time. You can find those anchor points. You can start doing all of the things, but it's first like recognizing oh, there is a transition portal. So I can get creative and notice and start to follow sparks to make it easier for myself and my nervous system. All right. Thank you for listening to this episode of ADHD Sparks. It was so good to be with you again today. If this episode helped you, share it with another ADHDer. And you can find out more about working with me at adriasophia.com/ADHD. All right, I'll talk to you in the next episode.